Welcome back to Rumor, where we deep dive into the mysteries that surround us. Today, we're looking at some of the wilder theories about the California wildfires. Now, let's remember, these are theories, but they are based on some intriguing facts. Let's get into it. I'm your host, FJ.
And I'm your co-host, DJ.
And this is Rumor. Okay, it's truly devastating what is happening in Los Angeles right now. The wildfires have caused so much devastation that entire neighborhoods are completely gone. And currently, the death toll is 16, and approximately 34,000 acres have been destroyed by the wildfires, and around 10,300 structures have been reported as destroyed as well. This number includes homes, businesses, and other buildings. The total economic loss, including both insured and uninsured damages, has been estimated to be between $135 billion and $150 billion.
And that's just until, now. Who knows?
Right now, at this moment, exactly. So let's speculate. What is causing all the wildfires? I have 5 theories.
Let's hear them.
All right, first one. Pretty easy one. They're caused by people. Intentional arsonists. So first off, let's talk about the arson. It's no secret that the fires start with human intervention. And as an example, I want to look at the first case, which is the 2018 Holy Fire of Southern California's Cleveland National Forest, which was confirmed to be the work of arsonist Forrest Clark, and who's also convicted for setting the fire. As a source, the LA Times wrote an article called "The Arsonist Sentenced to 10 Years for Starting Holy Fire in Southern California." Here's the conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theorists might take this case and expand it to claim that there are more arsonists involved in a coordinated effort to start fires for various sinister reasons, like population control and land manipulation. So in other words, some people believe that there is an orchestrated number or group of people that all they do is set these strategic fires for kind of evil reasons.
So what's an arsonist?
An arsonist is somebody who intentionally sets fire to something.
So specifically related to fire, arsonist. It's
Correct.
like somebody that sets fire. Okay.
Yeah, and another example for you, there's the campfire. So it's not directly linked to intentional arson, but in 2018, Camp Fire was associated with a faulty PG&E transmission line, leading to criminal charges against PG&E for involuntary manslaughter. This, again, was an article written by CNN that was named PG&E charged with 84 counts of manslaughter in connection to the 2018 Camp Fire. But the conspiracy theory with this is that some speculate that this was not an accident, but part of a larger scheme by corporations or government entities to clear land, manipulate insurance payouts, or influence policy.
Yes, I could see that happening. I mean, wasn't there a rumor too that insurance companies started dropping fire protection on homes around this area about 3 to 6 months ago? I heard that as a rumor, and I'm not sure. Have you heard anything about that, FJ?
I haven't heard that, but after going through a lot of these things that I prep for, it wouldn't be shocking.
Yeah, so that's what's a little bit shocking to me, that why would insurance companies just remove the fire protection on these homes, or choose not to cover some of these homes which happen to be in the area or the houses got burned?
It's interesting that you say that, because when I was looking at the statistics of what the costs were and damages, and we said between 135 and 150 billion, only 20 billion are insured.
Wow. Yeah, I feel for those people.
All right, so I'm going to go over to my third example of this first point. And people think that it could be arsonists that are causing this because...
Let me interrupt you. Arsonists, what's the benefit of an arsonist? Why would they start a fire? Is it because they're obsessed with fire, or do they have any gain from it? Just explain it to me, please. And I'm sure some of our listeners have maybe the same question. Why would an arsonist start a fire this massive? Or do you think that maybe they intended to start like a bushfire, then it just rapidly expanded quick because California being dry, all the bushes being dry, so it spread faster than expected, you think? Or would an arsonist have something to gain from this fire?
So there's a lot of different points. It could just be that somebody, the most obvious and probably the least common is someone's just obsessed with fire. That's probably the least common, wanting to do damage or harm. There's plenty of people that want to do that. And in California, arson or starting a
That's
fire
pretty
seems to
fucked
be,
up.
yeah, seems to be a pretty easy way to cause a lot of harm. And then the conspiracy theory route is that they are hired by people to get, something out of having this land and these people
Clear, yeah.
located the
I
land.
mean, this is like prime real estate. Those houses out worth $3,500 million.
Just wait till we get to my later theories. We're still on the first theory. That's how crazy this is. But one of the reasons why people think that a lot of these wildfires are caused by people and not by things like climate change and wind shifts and all that is because during several California wildfires, including the 2017 North Bay fires, there were reports of multiple ignition points, with some fires starting almost simultaneously in different locations. So just think about this. I'm in two different areas, or three different areas, let's say, and I'm starting a fire at the exact same time as somebody else in three areas.
It's got to be organized. I can't. Too much of a coincidence. Two, I would say okay, but three, yeah. And I mean, I'm just a little shocked too that a state as big as California with massive taxes, they would have something in place for something like this. Now, I know that earthquakes you cannot do anything about, but for a fire, I feel like there should be like a safety, like something in place, right? Well,
Fun.
like a fund, yeah, for fires. I mean, sure, national disasters or FEMA has money to help out in these situations, but no, what I'm saying is like a solution, like a sprinkler system or something. I don't know. We'll talk about this a little bit later because I have all these thoughts in my head, but it's like I'm not sure how to like spit them out.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because although whenever there's a lot of fires, the ones that make the national news are just a few of them because they're so bad. But there's a lot of fires in California every year. And if you see this as a big problem, instead of trying to come up with a solution, most of the time people are trying to figure out how to fix a fire that's already started. Like right now, nobody's thinking about what the money is to rebuild. They're really just thinking about how do we stop this thing? It's still there.
I know
It's and it's not intended on stopping anytime soon. And the destruction is absolutely insane. So it's good that you bring that up because I think a lot of people are not thinking enough about that, about how do you prevent the fire?
I mean, every year we hear about fires in California. So I feel like this should be like a system in place. There's a lot of, the government or the state of California has a lot of geniuses and a lot of smart people working for it, engineers, people that come up with materials. So I feel like they should come up with a solution to shut this fire down as soon as it spreads so far, or put a barrier, a line next to residential areas, maybe like a sprinkler system that spits out a lot of water so it does not spread further than that point. I don't know.
No, it's a good point. The sprinkler system thing is, we also had the problem with this latest fire that some of the fire hydrants were dry.
Yeah,
No
which is
water,
a big problem.
which they still don't understand why they're doing an investigation on it. But imagine putting in place these sprinkler systems and water not being there. And LA is not a dry area. There's water in LA. So what happened? People don't really know. Obviously, we don't have the answers to that, but a lot of people are currently looking into it because they just don't understand why. Is it budget cuts? Was it malicious? Why were there not enough water? Why was there not enough water in LA to stop the fires?
Yeah, I mean that's a big problem. In a state like, or in a city like LA or California in general, where fires are known to always spread very quickly. I mean, there's even movies about it. Firefighters dying trying to stop fires. So one thing, you want to make sure that you have water in case of an emergency to shut these fires down. We live in Massachusetts, and where there's not even fires over here, and you have the fire department coming flushing out the hydrants every year to make sure, the fire hydrants every year to make sure that they're not clogged and they have water and they're functioning in case of an emergency.
And especially in a state like California where it's very common.
Yeah, so I mean, again, there's it's easy to sit here and talk about this, but I feel like something could be done to prevent such a massive fire and not having. I hadn't heard this before until you mentioned it, but if there is no water in the hydrogens, I mean that kind of explains why this fire is spreading so much and causing so much damage and taking people's lives.
Yeah, I'll keep going with this kind of first part of what do we think caused it, and if it was arsonists, I want to go through two more cases where arsonists did cause the fires, and one was a human caused fire. It wasn't exactly an arson, but in 2020, the El Dorado fire was started by a couple using a smoke bomb for a gender reveal party, which ignited in the dry grass.
Oof.
And then the other one was just arson during protests. I mean, you have so many protests in California that there have been instances where fires were set during or around the times of political or social unrest, and that as an example, the 2020 protests. So a lot of things can cause these fires to start. These were some one-off examples, but just the human aspect of it, there's a lot of cases where it was believed that humans could have or have been proven to be the ones that have started the fires. All right, my second theory is land acquisition and development. So let's look at the land. After the campfire in Paradise, there was a rush to rebuild, but also discussions about how the land might change hands or be rezoned. So could this be an orchestrated move to acquire land cheaply for development?
It could be. It's a pretty fucked up way to do it, burning all that stuff. But I mean, there's got to be somebody big behind this to pull something like this. It's got to be. Oof. I mean, that means that everybody's corrupt. If something like that was to take place, and yeah, holy shit. I mean, that really goes deep. It is a conspiracy theory. I find that a little bit hard to believe, FJ. Although with a lot of fucked up shit that we've been hearing lately, nothing is too far-fetched, anymore.
Well, I'm glad you said that it's hard to believe, because I have some examples that might prove to be that that's actually not that hard to believe. Paradise, California, post-camp fire. So before the fire, Paradise was a small town known for its affordability and retirement homes. After the fire, the Camp Fire in 2018 devastated the town and it destroyed nearly 14,000 homes. And after the fire, there was considerable discussion about how to rebuild. The town faced challenges with insurance payouts, which could lead to properties being sold off at lower values. There was also talk of rezoning or changing land use policies to prevent similar disasters. In other words, this has been done. The 2018 Camp Fire is an example. And then there's the Santa Rosa and the Tubbs fire. In Santa Rosa, there was a mix of residential areas, including some older neighborhoods. After the fire, the 2017 Tubbs fire, it obliterated parts of the city, which included neighborhoods like Coffee Park. And there was a significant push for rebuilding, but with modern fire-resisting standards, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. This led to reevaluation of land use, with new developments being proposed that cater to higher income residents or different housing types. There's another example. I mean, you have this fresh slate and they're thinking, why don't we just rezone things to build? As an example, let me just back up here for our listeners. When you have a residential neighborhood, you cannot build high-rise or larger mixed-use developments in residential, because the zoning, which is essentially the code or the laws of that town or city, do not allow you to do so. Once you change the zoning, you are suddenly allowed to build bigger, higher, mixed use, in other words, residential, commercial.
Yeah, depending on the zoning.
Exactly. Yeah. So like if you have a zoning area that has mixed use, you can build offices, you can build condos, you can build larger mixed-use developments, but when you have a residential neighborhood, you are only allowed to build single-family homes or sometimes multi-family homes up to 4 units, and that's it. So you can see that by rezoning a property, a lot of people have something to gain from it because they can get,
Of course,
bigger.
especially like big developers.
Exactly. Now, here's another example. So I'm just going to keep providing examples about this.
Keep going. I love it.
The Woolsey fire in Malibu. So before the fire, Malibu is known for its high-value properties and strict building regulations due to its environmental and geographical challenges. Malibu's like up on a major hill.
Yeah.
Extremely, rich and high-value area. After the Woolsey fire, that damaged and destroyed over 1,600 structures, and many of them were high-end homes. But there was discussions about rebuilding with more stringent environmental and safety regulations. However, the land's value still remained high, leading to opportunities for developers and investors to acquire land at potentially lower prices due to the urgency of rebuilding or the complexities involved with adhering to the new regulations. Again, I'm going to kind of back up with the lingo and explain a little bit more clear. When you build a house, you have to abide by the laws of that town, the zoning or the zoning bylaws, the building bylaws, the codes of that town. What happened in Malibu is after the fire, the codes got even more stringent. So you almost had to do more to build a house. What that does is a simple or middle class person who tries to come into this neighborhood, or even upper middle class person, no longer can afford to build in this neighborhood, because in order to build and abide by these new laws or these new codes that they have set after the fire, suddenly these people cannot afford to build.
Because you got to take all these extra steps to comply with the new code and the new zoning restrictions, which makes it, obviously more architectural fees, more engineering fees, more builder fees, thus makes it more expensive to build.
Yeah, exactly. So by doing that, again, some people may have owned the land, but they couldn't rebuild. So it became kind of a useless lot unless they sold it off to a developer who could afford to rebuild there with the new laws, with the new codes.
What shocks me, though, to go back to the first thing that you talked about, is that how such small number of the houses was insured, or a small number of the damages caused. I mean, there was like big celebrities that their houses got burned down, and if the insurance really cut off, there's something sketchy over there that raises a flag, right?
And again, I don't know how the insurance.
I'm not sure either. I
California.
couldn't talk about that too much. Yeah, but it is. I did hear rumors that this was happening, or the insurance were cutting off, or removing the fire protection from the insurance policy, which it is a must, I think, in California. Obviously, optional to the people if you want to buy it or not. But and then this fire happens and causes massive damage, and most of the houses were not covered. I mean, that means that somebody knew something. This didn't just happen out of the blue. Again, it could be a complete coincidence. I just find it a little bit sketchy, that's all.
Well, one thing I could say about that, just thinking about it, not talking to you about it, is in areas where it's high flood, there's flood insurance.
Yeah.
And the flood insurance is much more expensive, where some people can't even afford it.
Yes.
In certain states, they require it regardless. Like, you have to have it. If you're in a flood zone, you got to have flood insurance. But not all states are like that. Could it be that California, being the type of state that has a lot of wildfires, the fire insurance is so high that not everybody can afford it?
Yeah, but the houses that got burned in the millions were celebrities. You tell me the celebrities could not afford a fire insurance? So, or maybe people, maybe it's also, it could be this, that people, because the fire insurance is so expensive, that people are like, oh, whoever thought that a fire massive like this will burn down celebrities' houses? You would think automatically that, oh, nobody will let the fire get to us because we're so important. And usually that's the case, and it just happened to be this time, and nobody thought that it would get that far or spread that fast.
Speaking of insurance companies, in general, after wildfires, insurance companies kind of have to pay up, right, for the ones that weren't insured. And it leads to scenarios where insurance companies or their affiliates buy back properties at reduced rates or where the land is sold to developers at lower prices due to the cost of rebuilding. Again, the cost of rebuilding. If you buy a house 50 years ago, the cost of building that house 50 years ago is not the cost of building that house today. So again, without thinking of the multi-million-dollar houses, there's also regular houses in regular neighborhoods that are more middle or upper middle class that people cannot afford to rebuild.
Very true, yeah.
So in as a specific case is in areas like those affected by the 2017 North Bay fires, which included Sonoma and Napa counties, there were reports of landowners selling to developers or new buyers at prices influenced by the cost of rebuilding versus the pre-fire market value. So it clearly affects a lot of people. The insurance companies know what they're doing in this area, and it seems like everybody's protected but the people that are middle-class people.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
Now, can I throw something really weird your way? The third theory.
Tell me. I have another theory after this theory that we haven't really chatted about before, but I'll tell you after I hear your theory.
All right, the third theory is directed energy weapons.
Okay.
So it gets really intriguing. Directed energy weapons. There are images from wildfires where houses are burned, but trees nearby are not touched. So this has led for some to speculate online about the directed energy weapons. And it's essentially a weapon that directs high heat or energy at one specific spot, which could lead to the burn patterns that we see in certain areas. And I have some examples.
Interesting thought, but from what I've seen, obviously I haven't seen every single video that's out there. It showed it. Looking at it from a plane flying over it, it looked like a pretty natural fire to me. It didn't seem like pinpointed to specific places. And then it's very hard to control a fire like that, by pinpointing at a house. Once the house burns, the bushes and everything that's flammable around it is going to catch fire, either you want it to or not, I think. But I can't wait to hear your findings.
Well, as an example, I'm going to go back to the campfire paradise of 2018, where some conspiracy theorists pointed to the particular burn patterns where houses were destroyed while trees and some other structures remained intact. They argued that such selective destruction could be a sign of targeted, non-natural fire source like DEWs. With the media coverage, photos and videos of the aftermath showed scenes that were difficult for some to reconcile with traditional wildlife behavior, which led to the speculation. A good source for this is Newsweek, that wrote an article stating that California campfire conspiracy theories blame directed energy weapons for destruction, and kind of goes into detail for that specifically. But they're looking at the patterns, and although the patterns we're currently looking at may not be that, there have been other fires that look more pattern-based.
Okay, that is interesting then.
All right. The other fire, again, the Tubbs fire in Santa Rosa in 2017, the fire spread at a crazy, astonishing rate, with some suggesting this speed and the way the fire jumped from structure to structure could indicate something beyond natural causes. And the conspiracy theorists highlighted images where cars appeared to have melted while nearby vegetation was untouched.
I did see a video on Instagram this morning that there was a G-Wagon, a Mercedes G-Wagon, and everything around it had burnt down, right? And I mean, there was like a meme, and they're like, oh, look at the G-Wagon, it's so strong, everything burned but it. And it literally looked like untouched. The tires were still intact, not burned, and there was a car right parked in front of it, maybe like, 16 feet or 10 feet, like how you normally see two cars in a parking lot. And the other car was like unrecognizable. And then it was a gray G-Wagon with pitch black windows, you know what I mean? And it was like literally just had dust on it. Either somebody parked it there to go look at their house, but it looked like he had been there, during the fire. And that I did find very interesting to see. I'm like, it looked almost like an advertisement for Mercedes.
Better go buy a G-Wagon, right?
Yeah. So that did seem a little interesting to me, that everything around, like literally FJ, everything around it was burnt down, and then you see this G-Wagon just sitting pretty over there, untouched from the fire.
Well, that's why these conspiracy theories have some ground, is how could that be? we're joking around saying, yeah, G-Wagon, it's indestructible, but it's actually not. It's
I
just
mean,
a
it's still a
car.
car. It still has tires. They are flammable. There's plastic, all around it. There's, flammable. The paint is flammable itself, unless this was a bulletproof or a guard G-Wagon. Even in that case, you would still see some signs of, fire, which I'm sure this thing will be circulating in the next few days around social media, and our listeners will probably see what I'm talking about.
I think that's the point of these DEWs is um, it seems like some things were intentionally spared. As an example, the Woolsey fire in Malibu in 2018. Again, these are common or these are repetitive because there's something strange about them, right? So similar to the other fires, some conspiracy theories revolved around the selective destruction of properties, particularly high-value homes, while less expensive or less strategic properties were spared. The claim is by video circulating on social media, claiming to show bright flashes or beams, which some interpreted as evidence of DEWs.
Yeah,
This particular fire.
that could also be fake, but yes, I see what you're saying. That, yeah,
It could be
it
fake.
could be. I mean, but it's a good point to bring up. I mean, this is what we do here. We are rumors, so we talk about rumors.
But it's just interesting that these conspiracy theories are always seen as crazy, but then when you actually look at some of the facts or some of the ideas behind them, they're not exactly crazy. They may not be true, but they're not crazy.
There is always some truth to it. Nothing comes out there without some truth behind it. So, that's why we love talking about these things, because there's always some truth to every theory.
Okay, and then I'll use the last example for DEWs is the Dixie Fire in 2021. The fire's behavior was described as erratic, with some parts of structures remaining while others were completely incinerated, leading to the speculation about directed energy sources. The conspiracy theorists sometimes reference satellite imagery or flight paths of military aircraft, suggesting that these could be related to DEW deployment. There's no credible evidence of this, but it's interesting to see how some military paths were also in the path of where the wildfires may have been.
Okay.
Again, may not be true. It's just interesting. My favorite, though, before we move on, my favorite is the blue roof conspiracy. There's a theory that homes with blue roofs or blue items were spared from fires due to some special property of the color blue because they were pre-marked. Like they were saying that, they were marked for protection. Any house with blue could not be burned down. And that's one of the things about the conspiracy theories of the DEW is that, because they were, only people who know who are the ins of everything that is causing, or,
And
the government or whoever it is that is saying it's okay to use these directed energy weapons is saying, hey, make sure your roof is blue or you have a blue car in your driveway, then you'll be spared. It's almost like insider information.
it's like a code, yeah, or like something that only an insider will know. Well, interesting about blue roofs, and I don't know how true this is, but in China, they're using this material that it's blue roofs, and somebody was talking about this is the new generation material, or it stops water leaks and everything. So you see it all over these like old houses. They are on a side of like a pond, like literally houses put together by hand with no electricity, no utilities, and they have a blue roof. People just put in this material. It's almost like a nice and water shield that you would put on a typical New England roof, but they're putting this thing over it, and you made it perfectly waterproof and weatherproof. So as far as the color blue being special or having some property that makes it unflammable, that I don't buy. But if it's something as a code said that, listen, blue houses don't touch, and these were the inside people, then so we got to look into that. But I don't think, if you found a house in the middle of this, I would find that very strange and, very fishy. The only house that was literally untouched, it was one that was built by an architect that they used, and we watched this together. They used the fireproof materials on the roof, on the windows, on the exterior shielding, on like the siding, everything. And the house was literally untouched, and it looked amazing. I mean, as an architect or whoever designed that house, I'll be very proud. His business is about to go up, that's for sure.
Yeah, just as a background, there's a lot of common building materials that are not fireproof but have a fire rating. What that means is that if you apply 1, 2, 3, or 4 sheets of this, the more you apply, the longer rating it has. As an example, if you apply 2 layers of a certain type of drywall, it will give you 1 hour fire rating, which means if there's a fire for 1 hour and then it goes away, then that structure will still be standing. If it's more than an hour, it will burn through. So that architect that you're talking about, he used the same type of idea. So these things exist. It's not like science fiction. This stuff exists. So it could just be that, here's the conspiracy theory. Maybe they're trying to push the construction of these buildings a little bit differently by using fireproofing materials or fire-rated materials, which the good thing is that, yes, it's really good to build a house like that and having, sprinkler deluge systems on all the windows and fireproofing on the roof. But not everybody can afford to build like that.
No, that's very true. I mean, I don't think they'll burn down the whole city just to prove, or push that idea. I mean, that just...
Are you sure? What if the zoning might change?
I mean, the zoning could change. I mean, them showing that house. Not, I hadn't thought about this before until you brought it up right now. I mean, what a better commercial than that? If you wanted to push those materials out there, that means, again, somebody very powerful is behind these materials that they're trying to push out there. And if I lived in LA and my house got burned down, and if I got the insurance money back, or if I could afford to build the house back, I would definitely build it out of fireproof, materials, and I would hire that architect, to design it for me. Very interesting point. I think for a fire this massive is just, I don't know. I mean, it's too much, I think, for something like that to happen, and I don't buy that. I guess you never know.
Yeah, it may not be real, but going off of that point, I'm going to go on to my 4th theory, because I think you make a good point. That climate change is causing the wildfires. A lot of people, especially on social media, are starting to speak more freely about their thoughts on climate change. Obviously, we don't believe that climate change is not real. The climate is changing, some good, some bad. But climate change has become a really big hot topic. So people are asking questions like, is it a smoke screen? No pun intended. There's a lot of political debates around it. Some argue that fires are exaggerated or even fabricated to push for more environmental regulations to secure funding. As an example, DJ, the 2018 Camp Fire, again, we go to the Camp Fire again, it was one of the most deadliest and most destructive wildfires in California's history, besides the one that's happening now. It had prompted intense discussions about climate change. In the wake of the fire, there was significant advocacy for stronger climate action. California's Governor Newsom, for instance, used the event to push more aggressive climate policies. Now, if you've ever designed or built something in California, we don't work in California, but I've heard from other architects who work in California, it is extremely difficult to get any sort of building permit or to design something for anybody that lives in California. It's just hard to get the plans approved by the town or by the city. They have so many regulations in California, it is a nightmare. So by what people think now, again, these are just theories, they suggest that these events are exaggerated or even staged, going back to hiring people to create the fires or using these weapons, as an example, to drive public support for these policies that they want to push, especially when they involve significant financial or regulatory changes.
Listen, climate change, happens. The climate does change. I mean, it's the circle of life. Before there was life, there was the Ice Age. And before the Ice Age, there was rivers in Dubai and forests and, all these things. I mean, this is just the circle of life. The climate does change every year. And what it does, it's changed the temperature of the seawater by 1 degree. Now, enough for it to cause a fire like this, I don't know. That's just something that it's not due to climate change. At least I don't think so. Although climate change, it again, could be real. I don't think that it is due to climate change that all these disasters are happen.
Well, the idea behind it, again, like the conspiracy theories, along with what is seen as fact or truth, they do have some truth behind them. So the way that they're explaining this climate change perspective is that the climate is changing and it's getting hotter and drier in California. And then due to high winds, as an example, there were some high winds recently in California, which is what they're saying caused the fire. If there's a spark and there's high winds and there's dry climate, fire will just spread.
Well, that does make sense.
But going back to the climate change thing, I'll keep going through my other examples. But in terms of climate change, it's such a broad example or such a broad topic that it is one of our topics that we're going to be covering later on in the season of the show. And what really sparked the debate of climate change is The Inconvenient Truth, which was Dick Cheney's movie that he made, which was pushed at all schools. I saw it in my school, and that was kind of set the stage for what is happening in the climate. He explained, like, in 10 years, the whole thing is gonna, the whole world is gonna change and all this. It has changed slightly. I think obviously that was exaggerated a little bit more than what it should have been, but this idea of what climate change is based off of that movie, and again, by a source like Dick Cheney, which is not exactly very reliable source in the energy market or in the climate change market, he became the face and the name of it. Now, his movie was called An Inconvenient Truth. There's a book that would highly suggest everybody to read called Inconvenient Facts that kind of goes over all of the facts, quote, facts that Dick Cheney gave in his movie, and kind of using science and saying, yes, but what about this? Not exactly saying that it's false, but just really looking at the other side of things, which is, I think, what we try to do in general. So when we talk about climate change, we're probably going to be referencing that book and that movie a little bit. But I'll go on to my second example of what happened and how climate change could be used as, I don't want to say as a weapon, but could be used to make changes. In 2017, we had the North Bay fires, which included the devastating Tubbs fire. Again, repetitive. These are the same fires we've been talking about because they were notably bad. They were linked to climate change in the media discourse, highlighting the need for carbon reduction strategies. And following these fires, there were renewed calls for carbon taxes or cap and trade expansions in California, which some saw as a direct consequence of the fire's impact on public opinion. Bloomberg wrote an article about it called California's Wildfires Boost Support for Carbon Tax. And the theorists argue that the narrative around these fires was manipulated to increase acceptance of carbon taxes and other climate-related legislation that might otherwise face opposition. Obviously, nobody wants to get taxed. Oh my God, there's a huge fire. Look at all the devastation. It's climate change. We got to pay the carbon tax.
I mean, that's how taxes started. And it was during a war that, how tax initially started. It was, let's pay tax until the war is over, so our troops can have support and families can have food to eat. And that 2% tax, turned into what we pay tax right now. So, raising the tax, obviously, the tax people or the government, whoever is behind, IRS, I don't fucking know who. There's so many hands that this shit passes, but whoever is behind the tax, they're like, opportunity to raise taxes. Let's put the taxes up. There's a big fucking fire. Nobody's gonna say shit because of some massive destruction. If somebody asked me, to pay some money, I would probably donate some money to some of these families that were hurt. I wouldn't fight the idea, right? Nobody's going to go out there and protest like, yeah, we don't want to pay, because it's devastation. When you see all these fires, people losing their homes, running away, they can't even get their pictures and their memories. Nobody's going to go out there and fight over the tax. So if you see the tax rising up, I mean, then, or maybe the government just takes the opportunity to raise the tax on this, knowing that people are not going to backfire too much. So yeah, that is fucked up.
Yeah, and that kind of bleeds into my last theory about crisis management and control, and they're all kind of linked to each other, right? But when disasters strike, governments often gain more power. So the debate around emergency measures and surveillance post-disaster is very real. Some theorists take this further, suggesting that fires could be a pretext for more authoritarian control or even population displacement to urban centers. So the theory is that government uses things like these crazy events to push their agendas, to push their agendas. As an example, I'm not saying that this is a conspiracy theory, but big things that happen, 9/11, suddenly we get new legislation about the Patriot Act that we can spy on our own civilians. And then you get the Gulf of Tonkin disaster, so essentially Pearl Harbor. There were some declassified files about the Gulf of Tonkin where the U.S. actually ended up harming its own civilians to justify the Vietnam War. It's not exactly far-fetched, but that was a different time, so maybe that's still not happening at that degree. But instead of, at that massive level, we have some wildfires, we change some legislation, and we kind of get our point across.
So some COVID in the mix.
Yes, so COVID, that's a later episode, but yes, that's the exact same thing. As an example, again, the Camp Fire of 2018, emergency powers were invoked by both state and local governments to manage the crisis, including evacuations, resource allocation, and land use decisions. This led to discussions about the expansion of emergency powers, with some laws being passed to streamline disaster response, which could be seen as increasing government control. So the government is just slowly inching their way, just tugging at the rope a little bit more and more and more, trying to get a little more control and using these fires as the excuse to do it, is what the theory is. The other example is surveillance and data collection post-wildfires. So following major wildfires, there are often increase in surveillance measures justified by the need to protect against looters or to manage public safety. We saw this actually on TV, on the news, where they said the National Guard or some military personnel were brought in to stop people from looting homes. So again, we're seeing this happen.
And not to stop, your point, but that was one of the things that I was actually going to say when I said, I have another theory. Another theory that I was thinking about that just kind of popped in my head, after we started this recording, was that it could have possibly been started by thieves, and looters. They're like, okay, let's start this in this nice neighborhoods. People are going to get scared. They're going to flee out. We go steal their shit, because in the case of an emergency, nobody's thinking, oh, let me take my money, let me take my gold. You just want to get rid of, your family members, your pets, and, get the hell out of there, your passport, right? But people didn't expect it to spread this fast. So, that's another theory that I was thinking about. It could very well be that let's, start this fire, get these people out, and let's go steal their shit or steal their things, right?
That's a great idea. I never even thought.
I didn't think about it until we started recording this. So, that could potentially be another theory that might have happened.
We're giving people ideas.
Hey, I thought about it, so I thought I'd bring it up. But again, I feel like, there's so much into this, FJ, that if it was started by by people stealing stuff, by thieves, and maybe the government couldn't really control the fire and they just let it go. And then I feel like they would have done something to stop it quicker. And another theory is that maybe it was influenced by the inside, somebody in the government, and they let it spread out this much where they cannot control it anymore. Or maybe they didn't think that it would spread. And the fact that it was windy, it spread out too fast. And, wildfires, that's what they call wildfires. They just, spread crazy. But yeah, that's one theory that I wanted to talk about before we close this episode, before I forgot about it.
Yeah, regarding things like looters, that suddenly makes it normal for military personnel or for police officers to be really surveillancing neighborhoods and looking around things and into things. And what people are saying, the downside of that is it's really normalizing the military presence. And that's not necessarily okay to do. So is that an excuse to bring more military in? I don't know. It could just be actually for good intentions.
Yes and no.
That everybody's safe.
Yeah, I think, that could probably be for good intentions, FJ, because in case of emergencies like this, you always bring the National Guard, the military, to help out, because the local police or fire department, they don't have that many troops where they can control something this massive. So in natural, in disasters like this, the military troops or even the army are always involved to help out, to get the situation under control.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Although it was not enacted, the scale of some wildfires has led to discussions about potential need for martial law to manage evacuations, looting, or to ensure public safety in these extreme scenarios. And this is after the 2020 Creek Fire. Areas were heavily patrolled and strict curfews were enforced in some regions to maintain order. So, although not exactly martial law, and by martial law, that means that there is no law, that
Yeah.
people can kind of do whatever they want in an emergency situation. It wasn't martial law, but suddenly it was heavily patrolled. This is the 2020 Creek Fire. It was heavily patrolled. There were strict curfews. You couldn't be out at a certain time. That's a lot of government control. Again, public safety, yes, but at what cost? You certainly start to lose some.
No, I see your point, but another thing I think about is that the population is so much bigger than the military or than, the government force, is that how you can't, it's impossible to have, one police officer or one military person per capita, per person, right, that lives in there. So how can we control these people? Let's put a curfew on them, and that way the military gets a little bit of a break, during nighttime, and it's not, too many people doing stupid shit, and then in the dark always nothing good happens, right? Especially in times like this if there's no military. So I think that's one way, just to control people, to make sure that things do not get out of control. And that's my personal opinion. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but so it could be for a good deed or a good cause.
It could be. That's assuming that the intentions are good, and of course we're going to assume that.
I mean, that's what you want to assume, for the government. That's why they're in place, right? Protect and serve, the police. So that's why I bring that up. But there's both sides to everything.
Yeah, there's always a different side. If there were sinister reasons, it could be a way to control the population, making it like, well, it was okay when we did it in 2020, because it maintained law and order, so we're going to do it again. And it may set a precedent for later events that may not meet it. That's the other side.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I understand that part too.
So in regards to the LA fires, there have been some other criticisms of the situations having to do with the fire chief being a woman and a member of the LGBTQ, and claiming that she was a DEI hire. Although she did have actually decades of experience working for the fire department, a lot of people were saying that she led the way for more inclusive hiring practices instead of just skill-based. DEI hire versus skill-based is a big topic. And I'm a firm believer of, if you are a woman and you can do the job well, you should do it, and it should be merit-based. It has nothing to do with whatever your gender is or whoever you love or whatever. It has to do with your skill. Because in the end, if your house was on fire and your child was on the second floor, which firefighter would you pick? The one that is politically correct or the one that's going to save your child? In the end, everyone's going to pick the one that's going to save their child, no matter what they look like, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, as long as they get their kid out. And that is what it should be.
I agree 100%. I mean, not just for that, but for any job, somebody that is skilled to do that particular job should be hired. So all of this, let's, give everybody a job just because to balance everything. Sure, I agree with that too. You got to give everybody fair chances, but, you should be able to perform at the level at this other, firefighters, police officers, construction work, I don't know, whatever the case might be. Doesn't have to be firefighters, but in this case, firefighters do save lives, and we thank them for their services. But yeah, I would obviously want a skilled firefighter to come and, rescue me, my family, my kids, my pet, whoever. And I think that every person would agree with that. Now, if you want to put just somebody in there just to add the numbers up and check all the boxes, then sure, that's fine. But, emergency situations only happen once in a while. And when that happens, you want to make sure that you have the right people in place to put things back in place and,
I mean, I
get shit done.
I completely disagree with that. You shouldn't do anything to just check the boxes.
No,
I think if somebody has a skill, they should be hired.
That's not what I said at all. I'm saying, like, I'm sure that a lot of people are doing this. Well, what I meant to say is that I'm sure a lot of places are doing this just to check the boxes and show everybody that, see, we are being fair. We are hiring, this people and hiring those people, all kinds, just, to have all the numbers even. But yeah, I think that if you can do the job, you should be hired for that specific job. And then if you want to be, I don't know, a fucking makeup artist, then go work at Sephora. Don't be a firefighter. Just, you know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, especially when you have people's lives in your hands. You should be skilled or the best of the best for that job.
Yeah.
Regarding the fire chief being a woman, again, I have no problem with the fire chief being a woman if she does the job, and she
I mean, she might be very fucking good at it. We don't know that, you know.
yeah, she had over 20 years of experience. I think that if anybody should be a fire chief, it should be someone with decades of experience.
I mean, she or he or whatever she identifies, you know, definitely qualifies, you know, for this. But yes,
Well,
we're not saying for this specific case. I'm saying in general. Like everywhere you go now, have you noticed that nobody is good at their job anymore? Everybody just sucks. People can't even put groceries in the bags.
They can't even do that right, yeah. Well, along with that, we had a mayor, so the mayor of Los Angeles, who was not even there when this was happening. And she took her sweet time coming back. A lot of people were upset by that. So these are just some of the scandals regarding this latest fire. On top of that, there were budget cuts to the fire department a few years before that people believe may have led to things like the fire hydrants running dry when needing to be providing water. Governor Newsom is currently investigating these issues with the fire hydrants. And in reality, it is insane. I mean, having a fire hydrant with no water.
That you know... And that money was probably used to like house illegal immigrants.
and at the same time, we can't forget that President Biden announced that his last $500 million will finally go to Ukraine.
Well, like, thank God for that. What about the people in California and all these people, you know, in North Carolina? They're getting hit by all these natural disaster things. I think that they should get some help. There was people saying that, what was it, like $700 that they were giving? You know, not to get off topic right now, but and in order to do it, you have to apply online when there's like not even electricity or internet
service. Yeah.
And but anyways, that's another topic for another story.
Well, did you see the interview that Biden? So right after all this stuff happened, Biden decided to jump on a plane, which was the right thing to do, and go out and talk to the people that were being affected by this fire, and he did his whole spiel, you know, this is terrible. We're going to do our best to get everything right, which was right. That was the correct thing to say. And then, oh, yeah, I just became a great-grandfather.
Oh, how nice.
That's great. There's some,
I mean, hey, listen.
Read the room.
Becoming a great-grandfather, I'm sure it's exciting to everyone. And, but yeah, these people are losing their loved ones. And anyways, I don't want to get into that because, you know, Joe Biden, he's a sleepy Joe. I mean, you know, he probably doesn't even know what the fuck he's saying. They probably, you know, his prompter probably got shut off. He's like, shit, what do I say now? Okay, yeah, I became a grandfather. Let's say that. So I don't pay too much attention to that. But
as we wrap up today's deep dive into the rumors and theories swirling around the wildfires in this region, let's take a moment to remember what's truly at the heart of this tragedy. Beyond the conspiracy theories, the political debates, and the speculation, there are real people who've suffered immense loss. Many have lost their homes, their belongings, and in some cases, their sense of security and community, and sometimes even their loved ones. It's crucial that while we explore these narratives, we never lose sight of the human aspect of this disaster. Our thoughts go out to everyone who's been affected, and we hope for a swift recovery for all those rebuilding their lives from the ashes.
Definitely. Our hearts go out to all those people that were hurt by this fire. And if you can donate, that I'm sure people will appreciate it. We encourage everybody to donate whatever they can, $5, $10 to help these people out get out of this situation.
Thank you for listening to Rumor, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.